The chainsaws that come from the factory today are designed and built for safety as well as efficiency. But maintaining that built-in safety, or safety maintenance, is still the owner's job. Over the last number of years, a steadily increasing demand for safety has meant that saw manufacturers have gone well beyond simply adding safety features. Today's saws are built from the drawing board up, with safety as an ever more sophisticated part of the design. They feature chain brakes, throttle safety locks, and chain catchers. They include new chain profiles and bar tip angles to reduce kickback, smoother running engines, and special energy-absorbing mounts to reduce vibration. Weight has been cut back to reduce operator fatigue. Saws with high compression ratios now include a decompression button for ease in starting. Better carburetors and clutch assemblies now virtually ensure a stopped chain at idle. What all this means simply is that today's chainsaw in the hands of a professional can be a safe and efficient tool, as long as the built-in safety is maintained in the field, as long as the manufacturer's specifications are respected by the owner, and as long as the required inspection, service, and maintenance is performed on a regular schedule. The owner's manual is the single most important source of maintenance information. It gives the design specifications, the settings, the adjustments, and the tolerance that the saw requires, as well as the inspection and maintenance schedules. The major moving parts of the saw require daily inspection, cleaning, and adjustment. This is the time to inspect the bar for wear and damage. Check for such things as straightness, uneven wear on the top of the bottom rails, flaring, split rails at the nose, pieces chipped out of the rails, heat discoloration of the bar, and any damage to the sprocket nose assembly. Next, clean the groove of the bar with a tool that gets right to the bottom. Dirt and sawdust can gradually build up and get packed in by the drive links. This mixture of dirt and oil can slowly harden in the bottom of the bar groove, causing the chain to ride too high and reducing lubrication to the bar, chain, and tip. Also, clean out the oiler holes in the bar to ensure a good flow of oil. Next, inspect the chain, paying special attention to the drive links, since any wear or damage here is not visible during sharpening. Clutch and sprocket assembly should be cleaned daily to prevent the buildup of oil and sawdust. Debris can also be drawn into this area and be wound tightly around the sprocket. Check the sprocket for signs of undue wear and tear. Also, if the clutch springs are external, check that none of them are damaged or broken. A clean air filter and unobstructed air intake are two of the keys to smooth engine performance. The air filter should always be checked first when engine performance decreases. Clean the filter regularly by blowing it out, by shaking it, or by washing it with a small brush in soapy water. And be sure that you don't knock or blow dirt directly into the carburetor while you are cleaning the filter. It is a good idea to close the choke to keep all dirt out. Check the brake band for damage and replace as needed. Also clean any oil or dust buildup from around the band. To work properly, the chain's brake has to be correctly adjusted, properly maintained, and power tested after every gas up. The brake must be adjusted so that it deploys correctly and stops the chain when the saw snaps back violently, as in a kickback situation. A second safety feature is the throttle safety lock. It's designed to prevent the throttle from being advanced beyond the idle setting unless the operator is in full control of the saw. A third safety feature is the chain catcher, a small replaceable piece of aluminum or plastic located just below the drive sprocket. It is designed to catch the chain if it should fly off the bar. This reduces the length of chain that can possibly wrap around the saw or strike you in the right hand or arm. To summarize the most important points in chainsaw maintenance, here's a quick review. Trust your owner's manual. It is the most reliable source of specifications, settings, and maintenance procedures there is. Your owner's manual will also describe other periodic maintenance requirements that are important to the safe and efficient operation of the chainsaw. Make sure the manual is kept with your chainsaw equipment at all times. Check the bar, chain, and sprocket for damage or wear. Keep the air filter and air intake clean. Test the chain brake daily. It must be able to snap itself on and bring the chain to a full stop in a kickback situation. It should be adjusted or repaired by a pro. Test the throttle safety locks to ensure that it can positively prevent the throttle from moving unless the operator is in full control. Make sure that the chain catcher is in place. Remember that when using a chainsaw in logging operations, having one that is in good working order is required by law. The cutter on a saw chain is a 3/4 inch piece of hardened chrome-plated steel that has been factory sharpened to a razor edge. It is also one of the most complex and sophisticated cutting tools ever developed. These cutters are driven along the saw bar at speeds of over 100 feet per second by engines turning at over 10,000 RPM. With each pass through the wood, each and every cutter must gauge, slice, chisel out, and eject a chip of wood, and do it all at the rate that adds up to thousands of chips per minute. Cutters are computer designed and laboratory tested to be virtual precision instruments. For optimum efficiency and safety, the cutting angles and depth gauge settings must be exact. By the end of the day, even a few thousandths of an inch in error on the setting of the depth gauges can add up to lost production, increased wear and tear on the saw, especially on the chain, the bar, and sprocket. It will also mean increased operator fatigue, vibration exposure, and the ever-present danger of kickback. The owner's manual, the packing box, information sheets or booklets supplied by the manufacturer of the chain are the single most important source of information on your chain. The manufacturer's instructions for the saw, for the chain, and for how they work together are the guide, reference, and Bible of proper sharpening. An experienced chainsaw user knows without a doubt that the cutter is the most important part of the whole chainsaw. This is the part that does the job. While there are a large number of sizes, pitches, and gauges of saw chain, there are still basically two kinds, round and square. The shape of the top plate and side plate will quickly show the difference. The depth gauge is located in front of the cutting edge, and its depth below the top plate, measured in thousandths of an inch, determines exactly how deep the cutter will bite into the wood. Those very few small but critical measurements determine exactly how thick every single one of the thousands of chips the chain will throw in a day will be. Leave the depth gauge even 1 or 2 thousandths of an inch too high, and every single chip will be too thin. Cutting will slow down and production will drop off. A few thousandths of an inch too low on the depth gauge, which happens only if the wrong depth gauge tool is used, or if the job is done with no tool at all, can be far more serious. The chips will be too thick. Cutting speed and production will slow down. It's also much more strenuous work for the operator as vibration increases dramatically and more demand is made on the engine. But more importantly, depth gauges that are too low also increase the potential for kickback. A cutter at the tip of the bar, unprotected by the proper depth gauge, could contact solid wood, bite in too deeply, freeze the whole chain, and throw the saw back at its operator with deadly force. Square-tooth chains are the most common type of chain used by professionals. The leading point of the cutter, called the working point, enters the wood easily, allowing the side plate to slide through the fibers of wood while the top plate chisels out the individual wood chips. There are 3 main filing angles that you must know to correctly file your saw. The top plate filing angle, the top plate cutting edge angle, and the file guide angle. The top plate filing angle is the angle that corresponds to the file holder angle markings and is viewed from the top. It is usually between 20 and 35 degrees, and on most newer chains is represented by a score mark on the back of the top plate. The top plate cutting edge angle is the angle of the cutting edge when viewed from the side. It is usually 60 degrees on most professional chains, and can only be properly and consistently set with a file holder. If it is too thin, as in a fillet knife, it wears too fast. Too thick, as in a splitting axe, and it chips more than it cuts. The job requires the right size round file with a handle, a file holder with the right settings for your chain, a flat file and a depth gauge tool. A solid work surface at a comfortable height makes the job easier. Support the bar and hold the chain against the bar with one hand to prevent it from moving while you file. With the file holder riding firmly on the top plate and the depth gauge, line up the file holder alignment mark so that the desired angle marking is exactly parallel with the bar. Staying in the middle part of the bar, start with long, smooth strokes of the file, being sure to apply even, moderate pressure. File only outwards away from yourself. The cutters are chrome-plated, and dragging the file backwards would draw particles of the chrome into the cutting edge, as well as into the grooves of the file. Advance the chain forwards to set up the next few teeth to be sharpened. As you advance the chain, you are pushing on the back of the cutters, not on the sharpened edge. Sharpen all cutters on one side of the chain and then turn the saw or walk around to do the other side. When should the chain be sharpened? The answer is often. A full and thorough sharpening, including a careful inspection for nicks, chain damage, or uneven wear, should be performed once every working day. Next, check the depth gauges and lower if needed, being careful to perform the work at the same point on the bar to ensure uniformity of all cutters. Depth gauges should be checked every day and lowered when needed, using the flat file and a depth gauge tool. File off any part of the depth gauge that protrudes, but be careful not to file into the gauge tool itself and never use a tool that shows filing damage. File all depth gauges on the side of the chain in an outward direction, as you did with the cutter. Then turn the saw or walk around to the other side. This is to ensure depth gauges on both sides are filed the same. To recap, great accuracy in the sharpening angles and depth gauge settings is critical. No one can second guess the chain manufacturer on what settings are best. Rely on your manual. Use the right tools: a round file with handle, the right file holder, depth gauge tool, and flat file with handle. Work on a solid, comfortable work surface. Sharpen on a regular schedule, a thorough job once a day, and a touch-up every gas-up. Line up the file holder angle markings parallel to the bar. File with long, steady strokes away from yourself. And lower all depth gauges at the same point on the bar to ensure uniformity. Proper sharpening has at least 3 important safety benefits. First, if the cutter is kept sharp and properly angled to feed itself into the wood at precisely the right rate, and if the depth gauge is set to ensure a bite of the right depth, then the chance of chainsaw kickback is greatly reduced. Second, if the angles and settings are correct, the saw runs smoothly and vibration is kept to a minimum. And third, when the saw is running at its best, operator fatigue, one of the leading contributing causes to accidents and injuries, is also reduced. As chainsaws become more and more sophisticated, so does the job of proper sharpening. Today's cutting chains are high-tech precision instruments, capable of giving the user faster, safer, and easier production as long as the design specifications are properly maintained and applied.